Frankly, it sucks. Alright, so it doesn't suck per se, but it is very different from how it functions compared to all the other oaths. It has some unfair advantages and some lackluster parts which definitely need to be reworked to some degree. The entire oath needs to be reworked to some degree. But to rework Dawnwalker, we must first understand how Dawnwalker actually works. Dawnwalker is comprised of 3 mantras. Radiant Dawn, which is a little jump which comes down and deals some explosion damage and deals a lot of it. The second move is Blinding Dawn, which is a little spin attack where you spin around with your legs shooting light in all sorts of directions randomly. And you have the third mantra, which is Radiant Kick, which teleports to your opponent, dealing small amounts of damage. Then you have the talents, which you have the Oath talent giving you 2 combat mantras. Of course, you have Absolute Radiance, dealing damage. Dawnwalker mantras briefly makes you immune to all elemental status effects for a short period of time. We'll revisit this sooner. Thirdly, you have Protagonist Syndrome. The grasp of shadow is meaningless in the face of your blinding light. Your Dawnwalker mantras are empowered after being hit by Shadowcast. Again, we'll revisit this shortly. This one is the main problem. Before you get on with the rest of the video, please hit that subscribe button, as it would help me out a lot. While obtaining Dawnwalker is simple, it's not quite easy, at least not for everyone. To obtain Dawnwalker, all you need to do is head down to Layer 2, Floor 2 specifically, where you can find chests of medallions, which you can then pick up. You'll need a total of 60 of them, which you can then give to Claris to trade in for the Dawnwalker Oath, which you can then upgrade twice, 15 each, to obtain the talents and the mantras needed. It's 30 to unlock the Oath. While many people say that Dawnwalker doesn't have any requirements to use it, there actually is. It's a level requirement for power 15, as you can't talk to Claris unless you are power 15. So while there are no stat requirements, there are requirements that you do need to fill. Alright, I think that's enough yapping of the explanation. I'll start getting into why Dawnwalker is broken and unfair, frankly. And that has to do with how oaths work in general. Most oaths have a system in where you get an advantage, but you also get a way to punish you, such as with Arc Warder with the Arc Suit. You get the suit which you can then put on, but if posture broken, it disappears. A way to punish the Arc Suit wearer by getting rid of their advantage. Same thing with Silent Heart, for example. Their only way now is to silence you, is from critting, uppercutting, and flourishing. Those are the only ways they can silence you. While before, all they needed to do was parry. That was one-sided. Now it's two-sided, because now it's up to them trying to hit it and you trying to parry it. So now it's two-sided. It's fair. Same thing with Arc Warder. It's fair because it's two-sided. They have to manage their block and you have to pressure their block. Same thing goes for Vision Shaper, for example. They're clones. While they do get an unfair advantage against you, all you need to do is damage them in any way and it disappears completely. You can vent and it's just gone. Easy to deal with. However, Dawnwalker's advantage is quite different. Dawnwalker's advantage gives it a mantra bonus when being attacked by Shadow. That in and of itself feels, a bit fine since it's only against Shadow, but then you have to think about it, how it stands in relation with all other oaths. It gets an unfair advantage against something else which cannot be counteracted in any way. If you are fighting a Dawnwalker and you're using Shadow, there is nothing you can do to fight against it. You always will activate that 50% damage bonus, or I'm not sure if it's 50%, but that's what I kind of remember it being last time I checked. Either way, that is a big bonus that you can't avoid, and there's no counterplay to it. It's just an unfair advantage with no counterplay. feel like there are multiple options to be able to fix Dawnwalker and still have it be fun. The first option, which I quite like a lot, is that you give it a bar which fills up every time it's hit by an attunement. This bar would look similar to the Spectre Path bar, and when it fills over a certain threshold, you can then activate this bar by pressing X, going into Dawn mode, or whatever you want to call it. There you get the bonuses of both of the cards, however, instead of it just being a shadow affected by all attunements, can affect this bar and make it go up. So whenever you get hit by an attunement, period, the bar fills up. And then you can expend it at will to use it. Now you might be saying, well, isn't that kind of an unfair advantage in and of itself, because it's a bar that fills up by hitting an attunement no matter what, that the bar will fill up, no matter the attunement. While I disagree with you there, because it's a bar that fills up that will deplete once it's being used, which you can then play more passively once they're activating it. You then know that they're going to be trying to throw out those Dawnwalker moves more, so you have to be on your toes. You know that they're not going to be affected by status effects anymore during that time. So it's a bar that you know that they've filled up. Like, you know the little flare that the Dawnwalkers get whenever they have used a Dawnwalker move, they'll have that effect. You'll know when they're in this Dawnwalker mode. So you'll know when they're gonna when they're looking for these moves, these mantras.
Put your loving hand out, baby. I'm begging.
Alright, I think it's time to talk about the mantras. Specifically, well, Radiant Kick, as everyone is calling it, the Radiant Kick Oath. And I don't disagree. Radiant Kick is that good. It is upholding Dawnwalker to such a degree that people are calling it the Radiant Kick Oath. And I don't blame them. Radiant Kick is what is making Dawnwalker good. Because the passives are shite. The other mantras are not that good either. They're so situational. The passives are so situational. Radiant Kick is the only thing that's going for it right now. And for that reason, I feel like we need to tone down Radiant Kick a little bit, but then to bring up the passives and the mantras a bit. So like I suggested with the passives before, we can bring it up by adding that meter. That'll help a lot. But to fix the mantras, that's a different issue. Firstly, to tone down Radiant Kick a bit, we need to firstly approach the damage it can hold from a range. I feel like a good way to do this is the further away an opponent is, the less damage it will do, similar to how mobs and mantras work. So if you damage a mob from further away, it'll take less damage from the mantra. I feel the same way should be applied for Radiant Kick for players. If you're further away, the Radiant Kick should do less damage. There's one other way of which it is problematic, and that is not the damage, but it's the combo potential it sets up for. I feel like another way to fix that would be to remove its ragdolling, but instead still keep its pushing effect. So you can still push people around with it, but it stops ragdolling them. So you don't get like free combos off of it right after. Or if you want a different way to do it, you could just send them up instead of forwards, or away from you. You'd send them up instead. That way it'd be a lot harder to combo off of it, and you'd be a lot more situational to use Radiant Kick, as you just send the opponent up in the air instead of off. Alright, now we should talk about the other mantras, specifically Blinding Dawn and Radiant Dawn. I feel like a good way to fix Blinding Dawn, because it's currently kind of meh when you use it. I feel like whenever you get hit by Blinding Dawn, it should suck you in a little bit towards the player. That way, it's harder to escape it. I feel like the number one problem is you parry it once or twice, and you just move out of the way. That's it. It's just over. You can't continue or anything. It's just boring, flat. So I feel like a good way to just give it a little bit more spice, a bit more oomph whenever you get hit by it, sucks you in. As for Radiant Dawn, I don't feel like we need to change how Radiant Dawn works, but rather how it looks, because it doesn't feel very protagonisty. It doesn't feel like the main character, which Dawnwalker is supposed to be. It kind of just feels like I'm jumping up and landing on my ass, and a little explosion happens because I farted on the ground. It doesn't feel very oomphy, not very spicy, not very fun. I feel like a way to make it better would be to, when it goes up and the landing, it sticks more of a superhero landing, and like a little mini explosion happens. It'd still keep the same hitboxes and the same damage, but like a little mini explosion and a superhero landing. That way it just looks better and cleaner overall, with it still keeping the exact same move. It just looked less goofy and more cool. Alright, to summarize what I've said in the video about Dawnwalker, is that Dawnwalker doesn't follow the rules of which other oaths follow. It feels very stale with its mantras, and I feel like certain things could be fixed with it to make it more interesting, because it doesn't currently have a gimmick. Its only gimmick is against Shadow, so what I suggested here is to make its gimmick more broad in that sense, and to give it a little bit more balanced as an oath, because right now it's upheld very much by Radiant Kick. So if you can bring up the other aspects, such as the passives and the other mantras, I feel like Dawnwalker is a very good contestant for like being very, very well made game design wise, because it's a very fun concept. It's just performed kind of poorly. I have a lot more to say about Dawnwalker from a game design standpoint, but it's not going to fit in the video, and the video is already long enough. Right, so I see you've stayed to the end of the video, and I'd just like to say, if you enjoyed the video, please like and subscribe. That would help me out a shit ton, as this video took me ages to make. Otherwise, thank you for watching, and I'll see you in the next one. Peace.